Welcome to Cybersmart's Chatterbox series for parents. I'm Kelly.
I'm Cara.
And I'm Gulsum. We've all been teachers in Australian schools and are now education advisors for the Cybersmart educational program.
Cybersmart Chatterbox has been designed to help parents help their children and whole families to find out how to be cybersmart and to use the internet safely. You can join the conversation and forum by following the link below.
I once had a parent at a Cybersmart presentation share an anecdote that life was so much more simple in our parents' era. He said that when deciding on a school, mum or dad would walk out of the house, look left and then right, and whatever school was closest was the one you'd go to. Now, that doesn't happen so much today because there are so many choices that we have available. Now, Gulsum, as a teacher, with the advent of technology, are the lives of our children much different to the world we grew up in?
I think the basics are the same, the sibling relationships and rivalries, learning to ride a bike, learning how to make and keep friends, that's all relatively unchanged. What technology has changed is kids having to be aware of their digital footprints, kids as well as adults oversharing personal information, kids having comments, sometimes really negative things written about them online, or being tagged in photos when they don't necessarily want those photos to be up online. And then there's cyberbullying. Nowadays, with cyberbullying, the audience is so much wider and it spreads so much more quickly. It's very public.
Just on that word cyberbullying, it's often being bandied around. It's in the media quite often. Cara, what exactly does the cyberbullying look like when you see it online?
Well, cyberbullying does continue to be a major concern confronting children and young people and their parents, and let's face it, society as a whole. Cyberbullying could be sending abusive texts or emails. It might be posting unkind messages or inappropriate images on social networking sites, and often you'll see all of the comments that come underneath those. It's imitating others online, it's setting up fake Facebook profiles, and it's excluding others online, and we often see this in gaming forums. It's also doing things like creating polls and hostile forum threads.
Now, when I'm listening to you speak, surely some of these actions have to be against the law.
Many of the laws related to technology relate to the Federal Criminal Code. You're not allowed to use a phone or a computer to menace, harass or cause offence. There are also state laws that relate to things like stalking and harassment that people can find themselves in trouble with within the law with what they're doing online.
Cybersmart actually recommends 3 clear steps if you are being targeted online. Stop, block and report. So basically stop, don't retaliate, collect whatever evidence you can collect, block, and then report it to the site administration or to the police.
Or even sometimes the first port of call for kids, we tell them to tell mum and dad. And the good thing about parents that came out in recent Cybersmart research was that parents were actually very much aware if their child was being subjected to cyberbullying, particularly parents of younger kids. But the greatest disparity that was found is in the awareness and experience with parents of 16 to 17-year-olds, and that followed then with parents of 14 to 15-year-olds. Now, why do you think teenagers start moving away from parents and parents not being as engaged with what their kids are doing once they hit these marks of, 14, 15, 16 and 17?
Look, as a parent, you know your kids best and you will often be the people that identify changes in behaviour. It's one of the reasons why you actually need to start talking to your kids early.
In our Cybersmart presentations, we've had parents ask some of our trainers, what happens if you get told or you get the phone call that your child is the one who's actually doing the cyberbullying to other kids?
I think if your child is the one displaying cyberbullying behaviour, first and foremost, it does not mean that you are a bad parent. I definitely think that traditional punishment such as grounding or not allowing someone to leave the house, that doesn't necessarily work. You need to make it clear to your child that the behaviour is unacceptable, and this is one of the important things. Kids like boundaries and they need to know the limits. They need to know what is acceptable to you and what isn't. Make sure you're communicating regularly with your child's school and that you're working together with them. That this will often mean making sure you're aware of the school policies surrounding mobile phone use. Make sure you're monitoring their internet and mobile phone use and set limits. And support and teach your child how to change their behaviour. And if you're modelling empathy and you're encouraging them along the way, this will make it a lot easier.
Now, another thing, I think it's related to the topic of cyberbullying, but I've been reading a lot about trolling and I really don't know, what are some of the examples of trolling behaviour?
Trolls are generally anonymous to the person who's on the receiving end.
Trolling is basically when a user deliberately writes awful things in an online public forum, just wanting to get a bit of a reaction and a rise out of others. So an example of this has been in Queensland, a guy has gone onto the Rest in Peace tribute page for a teenager and has put some really nasty comments and photos on this page. Now, this guy actually went to court and received some jail time for his behaviour.
So if your child revealed to you that they were getting these sorts of messages, as a parent, what advice would you give to your child?
It's like a lot of things on the internet. As hard as it is, it's actually important not to respond to nasty and offensive comments. You've got to take the power away by blocking the troll and then also reporting them to the site administrators.
There's also been some talk about some social networking sites where people can anonymously post questions and answers. And I've read about kids being cyberbullied on these. So why, again, are kids using these sorts of sites?
Well, often they're using them to ask overtly sexual questions anonymously. But the reason kids are really using sites like these are just, for a bit of fun and to see what kind of replies they'll get. Sometimes kids are actually fishing for validation, asking questions like, do you like my latest pic? Do I look fat in this? And what they really want is a respondent to say, no, you're perfect.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is important to discuss when you have conversations with kids about these types of websites is, again, the real world test. Would they change their behaviour if they knew their real name would be associated with what they're saying?
Yeah, and I think just with these conversations around cyberbullying and trolling and these anonymous sites, if you strip away all the technology jargon, what we're really talking about is respectful communication, the same expectations of being nice to one another that we've always had, treating others the way that you would want to be treated.
That's right. So whatever you do in the offline world, just translate that into the online world. Lots of food for thought there. Thanks for listening. For more information on these issues or for tips on how to start these conversations with your children, visit the Cybersmart website, www.cybersmart.gov.au.